friends. Welcome to the Grow Podcast. I'm Wendy Jo.
And I'm Ashley, and I commit toxic positivity.
All right, I have to attest as well. I'm Wendy Jo, and I commit toxic positivity as well. Oh, this is a great topic and a really important one, I think. And like we were talking about earlier, as I was thinking about the topic and what we were going to talk about on the podcast, I realized I have been that person.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah, I have too. It's really, when we brought the topic up, I really had to take some time to do a self-awareness check to recognize where my toxicity lies. And I do it all the time.
Yeah, I think so. I think when people commit to positivity in their life, sometimes, it comes from a good place, right? It's not like we set out to be toxic about it.
Yeah.
We set out to say, let's try and look at the bright side. Let's stay in a positive light. But it can be really harmful to people. That's what I've learned by exploring the topic. And I also realized that when people do it to me, it pisses me off.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's real. What I realized when I kind of did that self-awareness check is that I'm really anxious to help you get to the other side of your experience. Like, I don't want you to live in this space. Like, I know this bad thing happened, and in my mind, I feel like I acknowledged it, but I don't express it. And I just want you to get to the next step.
Right.
And so what I think I've committed to recently, today, is I'm going to be a little bit more intentional about the acknowledgement phase and recognizing what you're going through, and then asking for permission to move on to exploring ways that we can look at it from a different perspective.
That's a really good way to step into a healthier way of being with other people. I don't know if everyone knows what toxic positivity is, so I looked it up. I just will read the definitions.
Okay.
Excessive and ineffective overgeneralization of a happy, optimistic state across all situations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like you. I'm anxious for people to get to that next step also. And I've had to, as exploring this topic, I had to do a self check also. And at home, I realized I was even doing it with my wife. She's all upset about something, and I'm already at the next phase where she's over it.
Yeah.
Look for the silver lining. It's terrible. That's not helpful to someone. It actually just completely negates their feelings.
Yeah.
And doesn't feel good.
No, it doesn't. And especially when you're in the midst of the bad experience, like you haven't come to a conclusion, you haven't really, analyzed it or worked through it. And I know we started off, it was kind of a joke saying like, hey, I commit toxic positivity. It's not necessarily a good thing, because it is hurtful to other people. Right. And I know that when I went through some of my experiences, the one that stands out for me is when I went through cyber theft, where I felt like everyone around me was waiting for me to just kind of be over it. And when I looked this term up, I thought about that time, and it kept replaying in my mind. I was like, that's why it hurt so bad, because it was this experience of toxic positivity. It was very, it was overlooking the experience that I was having, the feelings that I was having. And so what I wanted was compassion and acknowledgement that I went through a bad thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's great. So I think one thing that I love about this podcast is we are on a spiritual journey, looking for growth and to improve and understand ourselves. And in doing so, help other people to do the same thing. We're all on this growth journey. Yeah. And so as we explore the topics, it's going to come up, and really being able to acknowledge to yourself that you're doing something, that you didn't intend to hurt someone, but that it is hurtful, and making that change, that's what the journey's all about, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And, even this podcast is in divine timing. Before, I've heard the term toxic positivity, but I don't think I took any real time to really explore what it really meant. And
Mhm.
so when the topic came up, of course, I went, like you just did, looked at the definition. I said, ooh, girl, you do this all the time.
Right, right. And so it can leave the person feeling like, their feelings aren't important, that their experience doesn't matter because we're just glossing over and saying, get to the part where you've resolved.
Hmm.
And so I think for me, my mother was a very loving, compassionate person. However, she did this. And, I'm not blaming her, but I do think that some behavior is learned.
Yeah.
And, she was always trying to keep it positive. There's always a lesson, and then we just, move on. And mostly she didn't want to talk about the bad parts.
Yeah.
So I learned that and internalized it. Um, but we are all changing beings. So even with that being the case, I do think that it's possible to approach things in a different way that's more productive and acknowledges people's feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. And, just taking the time out to see how some of your behavior impacts other people. I definitely come from a family where the bad parts of the experience were overlooked, and kind of changing the trajectory for my children, for myself, and anybody I come in contact with. So obviously, the first step is being aware of
Mhm.
the behavior. And then the second step is deciding to make a change behind it.
Yes. And on that note, we'll be right back.
Sometimes I just don't feel good. And sometimes it's hard to be able to express that without being confronted with toxic positivity. I don't have to be happy in every situation. And I'm not going to be happy in every situation because I'm human. The reality is that we all go through ups and downs. And sometimes those downs, they suck. But toxic positivity really is the denial of my experience. And I just generally hate that. Sometimes people look at me and they're like, oh, wow, you're so inspirational. But I like to think it's because I'm just telling you what it is. And so while I think that positivity mindset is important, I don't think that it should be overgeneralized. Let's authentically connect. Let's connect regardless of the emotion and allow our emotions to guide us to be our highest divine selves.
And we're back. So, Ashley, I think you and I, see ourselves as positive people. We strive for that, right? Which is part of how we end up sticking with that end of human emotion and not the whole range, right? um, so it can really lead to burnout too. Have you ever experienced the positive burnout?
Yeah, it takes a lot of energy to always appear like things are going well.
Mhm.
And especially if things aren't all the way well, and especially if you have other emotions that you want to explore, right? When I do improv, I don't know if I ever told you that,
Oh,
but
I did not know that.
yeah, I'm a student of improv. And so
Nice.
I started doing that because I wanted to be more comfortable on stage. Well,
Mhm.
I continue to do it because of the personal development aspect of it. So, how do I show up on stage? How people see me on stage? Exploring all the different emotions has been part of what I've had to work through to be on stage as an improv artist. And so the one thing that they talk about is that the top five emotions are mad, glad, afraid, or sad, top four emotions. And all the rest of the emotions are variations of that that should be explored and should be seen and intentional and come through with a big pop
Oh.
because they're real.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so a lot of times we shy away from especially mad and afraid, because those are the ones that are seen as negative. But if we look at a whole person, we all have those range of emotions and variations of them as we go through our experiences.
Right. I think you're right. Many people are afraid of the mad, even the sad too. You know, going down those roads can be a little hairy sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But without the full range of emotions, we're not really getting the full range of experience either.
True. And you're putting all this energy in this one pot of emotion, and you're depriving everything else. And it's just not natural.
Right. I saw a comment on the video that you made about toxic positivity from someone. They said that people who just stay in that positive emotion, happy, everything's going to be great, really piss them off.
Yeah.
and I can see that, especially if you're, going through lots of struggles, and this person just seems like they're in la la land in a way.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I never thought of myself that way, but I think sometimes when you're always glossing over and not, allowing the people around you to be mad, sad, afraid, whatever, and you're not going down those roads, you're not really grounded and living in the real world.
Yeah, and it's just not authentic. Like, if I have all of these emotions because I have all of these experiences, and you show up every time I see you and never have any other emotion and never talk about any of your other experiences, I don't trust you because you're not real.
Right. It's you hit the nail on the head. It's not authentic. It can't be. I mean, sure, I think some people, I have a friend who's appears is a really positive person. And people always say she was born under a star because things always seem to click for her. Wow. But even someone like that is going to experience, problems of life. It's just life balances, everything balances itself. All this good is going to have some challenge, or bad. We can use the word bad, that comes into our life. And while I do think that ultimately they can provide lessons, that's true. When you're in the middle of it, you're just trying to get through it.
Yes. Yes. And, especially afraid and sad. So afraid, you need to confront it, right? And that's challenging. Sad, it needs to flow through you, and there's a process to both. And so if I'm still in the midst of coping and grieving with whatever I'm dealing with, and you come up to me with this insane positive mindset, it just doesn't feel good. Like,
right. You're in the middle of it and someone comes up to you and says, well, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, it's like, okay, but I feel like I'm in the toilet right now. Like,
right. What reason? I've had terrible things happen, and I don't think they happened for a particular reason. I think they were terrible. And ultimately, they did provide great lessons and some character growth when I was ready to explore them. But, if someone had ever said to me something like that, it irritates me also when people say that people choose their parents before they come to this life. I know this may be slightly off topic, but it will wrap around. Because you're telling me that a soul would purposely choose terribly abusive parents. I don't think so. I think it's random, and sometimes you get lucky and you get great parents who are there for you, and that presents its lesson in one way, and sometimes it's terrible and that presents other lessons, but I don't think you would choose that. It's just, that's another piece of, everything is perfect and the way it's supposed to be. Tell that to a kid who doesn't have any food in his belly, or I don't understand that.
Yeah, it's certain situations that nobody deserves. Nobody
Yeah.
should have to experience. Now, at the other side of it, like you pointed out, I think the experience should never have happened, but I think it is required of us to take said experiences and develop,
Hmm.
right?
I
And
agree. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's why it's so important to acknowledge the step of acknowledging the bad thing.
Hmm.
And then now let's look at the perspective after you've gone through this phase.
Right. Right. Very good point. And we will be right back.
Have you heard of the Cannabis Nursing School? It's a place where cannabis nursing, entrepreneurship, and spirituality meet. The High Align Tribe is waiting for you, and it's so easy to find. CannabisNursingSchool.com.
Hey there, friends. If you're an intuitive like me, you have thoughts and feelings about your own health and sometimes the health of others. What you're dealing with is medical intuition, but you probably don't know how to harness it. Hey, I met this wonderful woman named Gina, and she's doing a training on medical intuition with her company, The Heal World. Let's face it, there's lots of people getting sicker and sicker, and they often don't find answers with mainstream medicine. We have lots of technology, but we're missing the key: medical intuition. If you'd like to learn more, you could email her at gina@blisslife.com or give her a call at 352-888-2100. The Heal World. And we're back. So I was thinking, how, we've started to make changes because we actually explored a topic and said, oh, it was like a mirror, right? And we were like, okay, we're going to make some changes. That's like perfect for the spiritual journey and growth. How how do you think we can really create environments, not us, but everyone? How can people create environments where people are free to express their feelings, whatever they are, and be met with some understanding? You know.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit, but first know what your triggers are. I find sometimes people are actually triggered by angry feelings or sad feelings, want to hurry up and cover it up. And that's a triggered response. And
Mhm.
so, like, as the individual yourself, kind of working through what and why that's a trigger and seeing how you can, course correct the behavior a bit.
Right.
And so that way you feel a little bit more open to give permission for others to have their feelings and engage with you
Mhm.
and just have connection. I feel like for a lot of us, like people, human beings, we don't give each other enough permission to be human with each other. And
Right.
so that leads to lack of connection and like all of this mental health and like, depression and suicide, all these things I feel like are a symptom of our inability to connect with one another.
Right. I think those are really important points because even social media has, in many ways it's connected the world and made us closer, but not emotionally. you
Yeah.
know we don't feel the presence of the other person and look into their eyes, and so I think creating more connection in our lives. We're coming out of a global pandemic where we were 6 feet away from each other and wearing masks, and that only enhanced the problem, I think, and probably made this issue even bigger. It's probably why it's being talked about so much right now. I feel like it's kind of everywhere, because people are recognizing that they don't have that space to have this range of emotions.
Yeah.
So when you are with other people, I think, learning to listen, really listen, not wait for what you're going to say next, but really listen to the person. People know when you're actually listening. And just by doing that, sometimes it creates an environment where people can really be authentic with how they're feeling. I
Mhm.
think also not trying to one up, like someone's having a bad day or they feel sad or they're upset about something. And
Because I feel even more sad than you.
right, you don't know what happened to me today. Right? Right? I mean, it's like this weird one-upmanship of negativity. I don't know, but that's because many of us just don't feel heard or don't feel seen, and we don't. I don't think it's intentional. I think it's like, well, but wait a minute, I'm bad too, you know, and why not let that person go through what they need to go through and really listen and be there for them, and don't say anything about what you're going through. Just that time, you'll have your opportunity, or maybe if you've really had a tough day, when they're finished, then you can say, hey, do you have a few minutes to listen to what happened with me today?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think because the reality is, if two people come together and y'all both had a bad day, just I think part of relationship building is kind of getting to know the cadence of your relationship. And so if I'm talking with a good girlfriend about my day, we usually approach each other with, how is your day? And so person A says, how was your day? Then I'll respond and she gives me space. And then when I'm finished and she gives me feedback, then I say, well, how was your day? Right.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
And so in that interaction, we're both giving each other permission to spill our guts out while the other person listens with
Right.
compassion and respect. And so, I think that's the benefit of having good friends, building relationship with people, even doing this podcast with you, Wendy, like as we're developing our own cadence and our own communication style, is certain things that you're just going to learn about me through our
Right.
conversation and I about you. And so that's something that should be cherished because that's where the connection comes in.
Right.
These one-off conversations, these one and done kind of things that we're calling relationship, friendship, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, situationship, whatever, like that's not true connection. That's just y'all had got together in a moment and had a conversation.
Yes. Right. Right. I think that's the important piece. Learn what real connection is. Learn how to listen. And I love what you said about your girlfriend. You can, really take the time for each of you, and that must feel really good and fulfilling, rather than half listening and jumping in with what's going on with you, which is what I really hear very often, out in the world. And it's just because we don't really know how to make these connections. So I hope that this was helpful and will give people, real ideas about how to make changes that will feel so much better emotionally. And when we're feeling better emotionally, everything goes a little better,
Yeah,
maybe.
it's easier to connect.
Yes. Well, this has been great, Ashley. We're going to commit to no more toxic positivity from here forward,
Right.
and keep developing these skills as we grow.
All right, let's go.